Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1698 of our daily content grind. So, we're going to talk about something today that has been on my mind for quite a long time, and it's getting more and more relevant to Transformer fans in general. What you see on screen right now, you should be very, very well acquainted with at this point. This is 86 Optimus Prime from Studio Series. It is being hailed as a mini masterpiece in having a really nice transformation, a really good look in both modes, and being a completely fully featured G1 Optimus Prime that you would be hard-pressed to find anything wrong with or anything left out. And while that's absolutely fantastic to have something that we can call a definitive G1 Optimus Prime toy, we kind of stare at this a little bit and go, well, now what? Because there is a problem with definitive when you are talking about a toy line like Transformers. So when you get a definitive figure, when it is like literally as good as you can imagine, where do you go from there? That's the question today. See, we're throwing around this phrase mini masterpiece a lot lately. And it's becoming more and more relevant as these really, really nice Transformers come out. So, we don't just have to stick with Optimus. We'll be back with Optimus because he's the easy example for this. But, this goes all over the place. 86 Hot Rod, exact same thing. This toy was so good and so well designed that Takara felt no need to reinvent this for their new masterpiece Hot Rod. They literally just upscaled this and they're selling it as a masterpiece collection line. Okay, if that's the direction we're going in, if that's what the new MPG is about, fine, whatever. But it does kind of show you just how good the design is when there's really nothing that even masterpiece level budget can really do to improve upon it. I mean, there might be little bits of like cleanup to the engineering, but for the most part, it feels like they nailed it in every regard. So yeah, why try to like improve on perfection at this point? So Hot Rod kind of has the same idea, and we can just keep going with this. We can keep going like this. You can argue mini masterpiece with the new Soundwave from 86 as well. We have the 86 Cyclonus that's coming up, that's fixing things about a mold that I previously thought was mini masterpiece. But seeing some of the new things that they're doing with the new mold, I think to myself, wow, that's actually, that's actually an improvement. The head design is actually better than the previous one. That's neat of them to do. The colors are a little bit better, and we've had the whole debate over minor upgrades being sold as brand new toys when they really should have just gotten it done right the first time. That's beside the point. That's debate for another day. This is almost becoming problematic because when it comes to a Transformer toy line, you need to keep people invested and you need to keep them buying toys, but why would you buy another G1 Optimus Prime when you have the 86 figure? Why would you buy another Soundwave when you have the 86 Soundwave figure? It's almost as if Hasbro and Takara are designing themselves into a corner. Eventually, they would have had to produce, the air quote, best version of any particular character, and anything after that is going to be severely compromised if their goal is the same. So, for instance, yes, you could really try to, really get nitpicky with 86 Optimus Prime. Oh, well, he's a little bit bulky, his torso's a little bit thick, maybe his arms could be just like a little bit thicker, his chest a little bit more narrow. Everyone's just gonna find nitpick stuff to go like, well, maybe they could do this a little bit better. When the reality is, you're probably never going to see it. With the way that budgets are decreasing and they have to get more thinned down, we're seeing more mushroom pegs, more hollowed out parts, more simplified transformations, less paint apps. A lot of things just kind of shave the budget wherever they can on these toy releases. So to expect them to go bigger or more complex or anything just to achieve slightly better proportions or anything gets a little bit unrealistic, and ultimately, I don't think would serve their purpose very well or serve the audience very well. And in that regard, prices keep going up. So to get something better than 86 Prime or Hot Rod or Soundwave, you're going to be looking at paying a pretty penny. And at some point, it doesn't become cost effective to make this slightly better than the last one. So you are hit with the conundrum. What do you do now? What do you do now after you've produced the best toy you possibly can? Well, engineering wise, your thought is going to go to alternate versions of these characters. It's not as if releasing 86 Optimus Prime means that you're never going to see an Optimus Prime on the shelves again. They just go in different directions, to at least keep the name on the store shelves. Because as long as it is an Optimus Prime, it's going to sell. That is not a concern for anyone whatsoever. So, yeah, you might see Energon, you might see Cybertron, you might see Transformers Prime. We've already seen animated, all the different movie primes, etc. So you do have options as far as just keeping an Optimus Prime on the shelf, but that doesn't fix the problem of it's the original that sells the best. So what do you do selling a brand new original? The other direction to go about this is new sizes. So prior to the Commander class Optimus Prime, that is 86, we had multiple Voyager and even Leader class Optimus Primes to kind of fill the void. And those were designed as basically as budget friendly as they could. Optimus ended up being maybe a little bit smaller than he should. He is one of the larger of like the more like standard Autobots before you get into things like Jetfire and Omega Supreme. So he's not quite the size he's supposed to be compared to other toys in the line, but it was fine for the time, At the time when we got the Earthrise Optimus Prime, we all thought we were eating good. We all thought we had everything we needed and wanted, outside of like some proportion issues. But we learned. We learned. You could do this with size classes, but then again, like right now, everything's kind of dedicated in what it's doing size-wise. Pretty much everything in Studio Series and Generations is designed and put at prices specifically to make sure that they are the scale that they need to be in robot mode to look correct on a collector's shelf. And ultimately, that is what I prefer to have. It does mean every now and then I'm paying 25, 28 bucks for a Bumblebee. But ultimately, I do want these robots to all look correct in size. So you could do another G1 Optimus Prime at a Voyager size scale, but really, what's the point when it's not going to fit in with anything else you've got? Now, I do think a Voyager price is a nice butter zone for people who want Optimus Prime but don't want to spend a ton of money. So I don't imagine we'll never get that again. We absolutely will. But whether or not it's G1 based, that's the question. It does get into the question of like variations though, because we had like the toy based G1 Optimus Prime as the deluxe, and that was fine. And you could do something like that. But again, it's a finite path. You can only do that so many times. Back in the day, you would add gimmickry to your Optimus Primes. We had this for a good bit, So like we had the Combiner War Optimus that could combine. We had the Titans Return Optimus that was a triple changer. And then we had this one from Power of the Primes that could do the really cool evolution gimmick and gave us a really big, cool Optimus Prime. This is before they got really hard set on just keeping everything in scale. That came around during Siege. So they could still do things like this. And they could go back to that, but you're probably never going to see things like the gimmickry come back. It's a lot more parts, it's a lot more construction, it's a lot more expensive. And we already have Transformers that are so expensive already, it's hard to justify them. So, yeah, like when you look at like every avenue they used to go down in order to try to keep these characters alive on the shelves, you're just left with like roadblock after roadblock. The question remains. You have a definitive version of Optimus Prime. What do you do now? I think what you do really the only thing at that point is, one, you have to cool the character down a little bit. You got to not go straight up G1 style. That's satiated for a bit. What you really can do to help this, stylize. We've seen rare occasions where Transformers has been willing to take the original designs and actually stylize them into something fresh and different. In 2006, yes, we were excited because we got a brand new Optimus Prime that was based on the G1 design, but it helped that it was a really cool, more modern looking G1 Optimus Prime. You had a modern semi truck. You had these really cool proportions and new details the original design didn't have. Like, it felt fresh, like it was familiar and it was nice to have, but it felt fresh, which is something that you risk when you just do the same design over and over again. So I feel like this is a really easy way to go about it. And I do feel like next time we see a G1 Optimus, it is going to have some kind of stylization to it. What that is all just completely up to Hasbro or their designers, because you just never know. I know a good direction they could go with, and in this case, we need to go to a different character for an example. So Prowl here, this being the Masterpiece one, is one that I don't really think has reached mini Masterpiece level. You could probably do a deluxe where, the chest is narrower, the proportions are better, it doesn't have like such a forward out there chest. There's room for improvement in the current run of deluxe Prowl toys, so there's room to grow. The problem here, however, is not how they've been casting him in the toys, because they're based on the 84 figure. And that kind of raises the problem. You're designing these toys based on cars that haven't been on the roads in 4 decades. Like no one now, like a lot of people these days don't know what a Datsun is. Like, especially kids. Like, if these are toys that you're also going, yeah, we want kids to look at them and think they're cool and buy them as well. You're not going to get that out of, a 40-year-old car design that you are pushing specifically for collectors. And ultimately, it doesn't need to have that. As long as we've gotten it once, we don't need to have that again. I've got Jazz in multiple iterations of what's supposed to be his old Porsche mode. So I can do without the Porsche for a Jazz or two if it means getting a fresh figure out of the character. When it comes to Prowl, I look at that cop car and go, well, number one, it's a Japanese car that you didn't see, in America. It's a 2-door, which makes no sense for a police car. For a pursuit vehicle, yes, but it's not what you think of when you think police car. And then, of course, the deco is based on Japanese police cars, which means it's not really all that familiar for American kids or international. It's just the deco Prowl always has. So we keep using that deco. When I think police cars these days, they're always SUVs. And that does mean that Prowl would end up most likely potentially upping himself to a Voyager price point if they were to do a new modern Prowl like that. But we have things like the crankcase mold, so they kind of try to get away with it in deluxe class when they can. Point being, I feel like this would be a way more familiar vehicle mode if you really were trying to make this contemporary. You're not going to get as much of a connection out of a cop car based on a vehicle no one has seen on the roads in 40 years. Though, that said, a few months ago, I did see a silver Datsun on the road. Incredibly rare. Haven't seen it since, but apparently someone in town has one. Point being, you have room to modernize. And we see that very rarely in Transformers. So, like the VNR Optimus Prime came out, and a lot of people were really into that because it's such a different style for Optimus Prime. And it lets them have the character while also getting a completely different experience out of the toy, which is an incredibly important element. When you're doing that same, like, flat-nosed semi-truck where the windshield becomes the chest, every single time, you are going to feel like you're playing with the same toy in every iteration. The rear section's always going to become the legs. The arms are always going to fold out of the side of the cab. Switch it up, mix it up, do something different. You know, when you pick a different like model of vehicle for the character to transform into, now you have a completely different vibe for the character, and it feels like you've got something completely new on your hands, and it's kind of what we need. You know, you need the familiarity for the nostalgia, but you also need the freshness, so it feels like we got something completely new. And it's something that we Transformer fans complain about a lot. It just feels like we're buying the same things over and over. We want new things. To that regard, how new are you really willing to go, though? Because there's a limit to even to that. Could you do Optimus Prime if he wasn't a truck? Is it too ingrained into his identity in order to make him anything that is not a semi-truck of some kind? That I do not think you can do. That's very difficult. Now, in order to do something like that, even to do something like turn him into a long nose semi truck, what you need is media support to make it cool and popular on its own. You know, you're not going to get the nostalgia crowd to go for car Optimus Prime. You would need completely new media, which is how the '07 movie got a modern Optimus Prime to make sense. It's how we got, Camaro Bumblebee and an entire generation that now knows Bumblebee as a cool sports car, not the cute little Volkswagen Beetle. It takes a major shift in popularity in design style, and it's something that Transformers hasn't gone for in a long time. The movies just kind of do their own thing, and even in the movies now, we've kind of reverted Optimus to a more traditional look overall, which in some cases is not bad, but it does mean we're not really advancing what he can be anymore, and that does lead to these problems. And you could do it with a cartoon as well. I think Transformers Prime did wonders for getting a motorcycle RC to work. I think when they did it for the live action movies, and even in Energon, we're just kind of going like, well, I guess she ends up being a motorcycle because she's a smaller character, and it makes a little bit more sense than just like the car that would end up with a massive amount of like backpack hanging off of her. But by the time you get to Transformers Prime, they do not only a motorcycle RC, but a blue motorcycle RC. So now you're even defying her original color scheme. And everyone seemed okay with it. If anything, this is one of the most popular iterations of RC, more so than any attempts at her in live action. And I would say even more popular than a lot of modern interpretations that use the G1 design. It's basically Prime RC or G1 RC, and those are your options here. So you can do it with media, but unfortunately, they don't really seem to want to invest a lot in cartoons right now. So I'm not necessarily sure if that's possible. And the cartoon landscape has changed so dramatically, I'm not even sure if it's possible to capture that anymore. They would have to give it the best try they possibly could. And as much as I like aspects of Earthspark, we agree it was not a really strong attempt the way Transformers Prime was. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but comic books are not the place to do it. While the Skybound run has been really popular and successful, and it has had a lot of character design changes in the last few issues to mixed reactions, I don't necessarily think comic books are popular enough for Transformers as a medium to really sell new designs of these characters. When it comes to like a Spider-Man book, you run Spider-Man in a new costume for 6 issues. 2 years later, he's going to have a Marvel Legends. That's just how that goes. But that's because that's the main media for the character. Cartoons are like a side thing when it comes to Marvel characters. Even the movies are considered side compared to the original comic books. When it comes to Transformers, we really had like our bread and butter was in the cartoons, and comic books sometimes were along for the ride, but we've not had a consistent enough run of comic books to really establish in that media the way that Marvel characters had. It takes the movies. The movies kind of overtook the cartoons as far as just popularity and cultural awareness, and that's where you get to get away with things like this. So those are the thoughts of the day. What happens when you have a definitive toy of a Transformer character? What do you do with it, and how do you make things different so that you can have actual new versions of them? It gets difficult. It gets very difficult, and I don't know if Hasbro is daring enough anymore to do what it takes to actually reinvent, their cash cow franchise. But we have to wait and see. Eventually, Generations will have a new Optimus Prime that's based on the G1 design. We'll just have to wait to see what they do with it. So there's the discussion for the day. It's one that the more mini masterpieces we get is become more and more relevant. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.